Hello everyone, Hamer back again with another Mission Impossible episode review. Again, pardon the mess behind me. I'm almost to the point where my new office is going to be ready. But anyway, today we are doing Season 5, Episode 9, which is called The Amateur. This one starts yet again in East Germany, in a city called Ransdorf, which doesn't actually exist. A guy is tossed out of a tavern by the proprietor Eric Schilling. And we then see Dana as a waitress in the tavern, who gives a hidden message to a fellow who we later learn is Max Wittstock, an American agent. Wittstock beats a hasty exit as he sees an officer and tosses Dana's message in the trash can where Eric finds it, indicating a meeting tonight at 10:30. Max meets with Jim and Barney to turn over some kind of device, but police sirens are heard, and in the gunfight, Max is killed. Jim and Barney take his car and speed off, driving the car into a waiting van to elude the police. Police Colonel Eckert is furious with his men for losing the car and orders the border sealed and surveillance everywhere. Eckert gets a call and tells one man to go and find a Father Bernard at a rectory, who was Max's contact, and tells the other to retrace Max's steps over the past few days, indicating that what they're looking for is a secret weapon that has just been developed. At a warehouse, the IMF discuss the weapon, which they call a rocket laser. Dana, using the name Jenny, sneaks away from the tavern, telling Schilling that she's just going to get some film and will be back soon. Jim hands Dana the guidance controller, which is the smallest piece, and hands other pieces to the others, in an effort to get all of the pieces out of the country. Barney gives her a jar of cold cream to hide the piece, and she heads back to the tavern and hides the jar amongst her things, where Schilling insists that he have a drink with her, which bothers Clara, the other waitress and Eric's girlfriend. He asks Dana some personal questions and says he wants to be her friend, not just her employer. Eckert arrives and shows him a picture of Wittstock, and Eric says he doesn't know too much about him, he's just a casual patron. Eckert suddenly warns him to be more forthcoming, and Eric recalls that Max chatted with Dana, but doesn't reveal anything. Clara and Dana are worried as Eckert looks around. Eckert questions Dana, who acts shocked to learn that Max is dead. Clara gets upset at Dana about Eric, and Eric has to break up their argument. Eric tells Clara that he stumbled upon Dana's note and intends to find whatever it is that she's hiding and get a massive reward for finding it. Clara tells him to be careful. Barney and Doug join a bike race as a way to get to the airport, while Eckert's men find the IMF van, but no further immediate leads. Jim and Doug go to the rectory to see Father Bernard. They find the officers there who question them, but allow them to see the priest, who they say has had a stroke. Father Bernard is able to indicate with his eyes for Jim to pick up a prayer book, which he does as they look through the suitcases, the officers, that is. Father Bernard dies, and Jim and Doug leave with the book, which contains a list of agents. Eric looks through Dana's stuff, knocking the jar of cream over and breaking it, finding the false compartment and the guidance unit. Eric asks Dana for a date tomorrow, and she accepts, knowing that she's going to the airport and won't have to bother, as Clara overhears. Eric shows her Clara the device, saying he's going to sell it to whoever Dana is working for. Clara says he doesn't have the guts or the brains for such high-level action. She's going to Eckert, forcing a saddened Eric to shoot her. Eckert's man spots him as he goes out the back entrance with her body. Eckert tells him, just keep watching Eric. Paris suffers a tire puncture and sends Barney on ahead, but is lucky enough to get a ride from a friendly cop, passing Barney on the way there and waving. The IMF gather in Dornberg near the airport, and Dana laments the loss of the controller, wanting to go back for it, but Jim says they have a flight to catch soon, so there isn't time for that. Dana calls Eric instead, with Eckert overhearing, and asks him to come to Dornberg to meet to exchange gifts. Eckert tells his men to get ready to take over airport security for the day, hoping to entrap the entire bunch. A disguised Paris finds Eric at a ticket window, with Eckert, of course, watching. They make their exchange. Paris hides the controller in a candy machine and dashes off to the IMF van outside, taking off the disguise as he runs. It's actually the same disguise that he used in Decoy. Jim picks up the controller and joins them as Eric celebrates his good fortune. The IMF calls the airport manager, with Paris posing as a government official, to warn them about a situation. Eckert finds Eric, who tries vainly to explain his presence at the airport, with Eckert telling him how dumb he is. He ended up taking counterfeit money for his prize, and demands the full story. Eric says the whole thing was Clara's idea, hoping to strike it rich, but Eckert, of course, knows better. The IMF exit their van as a news troupe from London, joining the passengers getting off a plane from there. The airport manager tells them their visas have been revoked and demands they get back on their plane. Jim feigns indignation, but they head back with Dana disguised as a man to avoid being spotted by Eric and Eckert. Eric pleads with Eckert to make a deal, but Eckert tells him he has nothing to bargain with. Eckert's men confirm they have all exits covered and they'll find those people really, really soon as the plane takes off. Mission accomplished. I'm going to give this episode a grade of C+. I was a little bit torn about it. I had it rated significantly higher during my first foray in terms of ranking the episodes. But in looking at it again and kind of looking at it a little bit more critically and objectively, I think C+ is where it belongs. Starting with the good, the actors are great. Anthony Zerbe is quality in terms of acting. Ronald Feinberg, who plays Colonel Eckert, is also great. I'll say more about them later. This is going to be an actors versus characters thing. But in terms of the actors themselves, top notch. Also good, it's an above average plot. It's a little bit of a unique plot, again, where a quote unquote civilian sort of gets involved, similar to what happened earlier this season with The Innocent. It's very, very different, of course, in terms of like what that said civilian actually ends up doing and how they get involved. But again, kind of unique. Again, it would be really, really easy for this episode to be kind of formulaic, just intrigue in a foreign country. But as I mentioned before, I think it's good that the writers mixed it up a little bit. The teamwork is decent. It's not super fantastic, but it's fine. And so the team does end up earning their win. They have to do a little bit of improv along the way, which is always good. Everything doesn't go quite rat-a-tat-tat. The final sequence at the airport, the final act, I think is pretty good. Visually, it's really nice. The way that the IMF kind of juggle the controller and how they have it all planned out. Okay, here's what we're going to need to do to kind of, escape Eckert and the guards. They with Barney opening the candy machine, Paris putting it in the candy machine, hightailing it out of there, and then Jim picking it up on his way out. So, and then they all gather together in their van. That's actually quite cool. Moving on, though, what is not good at all? First of all, I just want to make a note. I am so sick of the polka music that has pervaded this season so far. Enough already, please. Gosh, if I never hear that again, it'll be too soon. That's just kind of a side note. Moving on to the bad. I've mentioned about Ronald Feinberg and Anthony Zerbe being fantastic actors, filling the roles really well. The characters, though, leave a fair bit to be desired. Feinberg's character, Colonel Eckert, is, the performance is really, really wasted. It always seems to be the case when he's on the show. I don't know exactly why that is the case. Eric Schilling, the character, I wrote during my first little paragraph write-up that, he's kind of, on that fine line between genius and schmuck. I don't know why I thought that. I don't really see anything, and I have no idea where the idea came from in my head, that there's any genius involved with this guy. He's, as Clara tells him, he's a small-time hustler. He's overmatched at every level. And I mean, this is going to sound like I'm really bashing the character, but you know what? I'm just going to say what I think, and I think the objective data, bears it out. Eric drives the plot, but there's zero indication that he's actually going to succeed. He just stumbles upon something. I realize this time that there's really no foundation even for why he becomes so flirtatious with Dana. Why does he think that Dana's got something that, he can take advantage of, or he can seize an opportunity with? I don't really even get that. Where does that even come from? He's flirtatious and, really, comes on to Dana even before he finds that note. So I'm like, where exactly is that coming from? It kind of doesn't make sense. And of course, just like in Decoy, the previous episode, all the dialogue between them is just really kind of strained and silly. Oh, I'd like to get to know you better. I'd like to be your friend, and all of this kind of stuff. And it's just really grating to me after a while. I don't like it. One thing I just also realized and I wanted to point out that disappointed me actually a little bit about the ending, which otherwise is really, really well done. Dana disguises herself for obvious reasons because both Eric and Eckert know her, and it would be very obvious who she is. But Jim and Doug don't disguise themselves, interestingly enough. What if the guy, whose name I don't recall, what if Eckert's man who was with them at the rectory when they were visiting Father Bernard, what if he had been there? He would have recognized them too. And the jig may have been up at that point because of it. So I don't know. I guess maybe the writers hadn't kind of thought that much ahead, but that is kind of a bit of a glaring omission in a sense. And it seems like the writers just wanted to wrap it up one way or the other. That's how it seems to me. The biggest problem here with the Eric Schilling character is he's all talk and no action. And I'm being very, very generous when I say that. This episode is low on the action side. There's a lot of dialogue. And the one thing I've learned in watching TV characters and in real life is that if somebody is really, really good at something, if somebody's really as awesome as they claim to be, if they have to claim to be awesome, they're probably not that awesome. Okay? You would know it by what they do. They don't need to talk about it. They'll show you. And that's the really big problem with this character for me. What exactly does Eric do that is so awesome other than break a jar of cold cream and stumble across a secret? What he's doing is he's flapping his gums all the time about how great and smart he is. I have a computer for a mind and all of that kind of garbage. It's completely ridiculous and unnecessary. And that's why this character really doesn't work. There's nothing genius at all about this character. He is a lame schmuck. I know that that's kind of the point of the episode, that he is an amateur, that he should stay in his lane, and people tell him to do it, but I feel beaten over the head with it. I really do. Like at every single stage, here he is, this cocky, conceited guy, and at every step of the plan, he's being brought down a peg, and frankly, he's too stupid to even realize it. The whole plot, frankly, reminds me of many future episodes, and I will point this out, especially in season 6 and 7, where the IMF is just way ahead of their opponents. Sometimes I'll point out they are miles ahead of their opponents, and it just completely seems unfair. I mentioned, even going back to season 1, that it's generally not a good episode when the IMF is kind of ganging up on a schmuck. That wasn't their intent in this episode. It just kind of happened that way. It just, it's circumstances. So it's not like they went after, Eric deliberately. But to say that the IMF are in total control and there never really seems to be a threat to the plan, other than Dana finding, oh my gosh, I lost the controller, like that's it. That's just a contrived coincidence, just for the sake of making a full hour plot. That's really what it is. Even the intelligent Eckert doesn't really seem like much of a threat to the plan. I really was never of the impression that, he's going to find a way to, do anything here. And I was absolutely right. Anyway, I think I'm going to leave it at that because there's really not a whole heck of a lot to say in this episode. It's a one-dimensional episode. It all focuses around Eric Schilling and, his inability to pull off something because he's just completely overmatched. And and I don't want to beat it to death anymore than I already have. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you as always for watching. Please like this episode review video. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and please leave your comments. As always, I would love to hear what you have to say. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.